Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I am so excited for today's video. It is the 1st of December. Christmas is just around the corner. I've got my new homemade Christmas apron on and we're ready to make some delicious Christmas food. I love Christmas because I love getting together with my friends and my family and eating lots of good food. But food is so flippin' expensive at the moment. It's absolutely ridiculous, and I know that Christmas can be a really expensive time of year for people, so I thought, let's do Christmas on a budget this year. We're making an epic Christmas feast for under $100 for 6 people. And this isn't one of those videos where they measure out how much they used of everything and then worked it out and it was $100, but really if you went to the shops and bought it, it would be like $500. No, I bought every single thing that we're gonna use for $99.52 from Woolworths, right down to the salt, the oil, everything. The cupboard is completely off limits, and the fridge. On today's Christmas feast menu, we're making a slow-cooked pork shoulder with onion gravy, a sausage and prune stuffing, homemade brioche buns, an apple and fennel slaw with homemade aioli, roasted pumpkin, charred green beans in garlic butter topped with some toasted almonds, and for pudding, we're having a pear tart tatin with cinnamon ice cream. It's gonna be amazing. Now, it's currently 1:30 and I'm hoping to eat around 6:37, so we're gonna get all of our meal made and prepared in that time. I've got my oven on to 240 degrees Celsius, so really nice and hot for my pork to go in, and I've got my pork sitting out on the bench. I want it to come a little bit to room temperature, so take it out of the fridge about half an hour to an hour before we're gonna cook it. And the very first thing we're gonna do is make our ice cream. Yep, we're making ice cream from scratch. We're gonna do a really simple ice cream. It's 2 ingredients. We're just gonna use cream and condensed milk, and then we're gonna jazz it up and make it Christmassy with some cinnamon. So the first thing we're gonna do, so I've got 300 mils of cream, and I'm gonna whack it in a metal bowl. And I'm using a metal bowl because metal conducts heat really quickly, so this will freeze way faster in this bowl, but any big bowl is great. Then we're gonna whisk this until we get stiff peaks. I like to whip cream by hand because we don't wanna over whip it, then it's gonna turn to butter, but you can absolutely use our Whizzie's hand mixer. Ah! Whoops. This is gonna be a messy video, I think. Right, my cream is lovely and whipped. Now, obviously, because I'm not using anything from the cupboard, I'm not gonna add any extra ingredients or freestyle, but you can totally, if you've got some vanilla at home, whack a teaspoon of vanilla essence in here, that will be delicious too. And then I've got a can of condensed milk. So this is 397 grams that we're just gonna whack straight in. And the great thing about using condensed milk is it's gonna bring our sweetness. We don't need to add any sugar. It's really easy. And it also makes a really lovely consistency when the ice cream freezes. So often when you make ice cream, if you don't have an ice cream machine, we need to go back to the freezer every 15 to 20 minutes to keep it moving. This just freezes beautifully as it is. And then we're gonna add about a teaspoon of cinnamon. Remember, you can always add more, but you can't take it out, so start small. Right, we're gonna whisk in that condensed milk. So when you add the condensed milk, it immediately makes it way more runny, but that's totally fine. We'll just give it a good whisk and get it as thick as we can. Let's give it a little taste to check for flavors. Oh my gosh, it's so good. So Christmassy. I think it's enough cinnamon. It's just like a little warmth of cinnamon, which is lovely. This is honestly like the best ice cream hack ever. We literally made this in like 5 minutes. Okay, I'm gonna leave it in this bowl, but you could absolutely put this in a container. You could also make this the night before or a couple days before, so it's really nice and frozen. But I'm just gonna glad wrap it in the bowl so it freezes nice and quickly. And I'm gonna push the glad wrap down onto the surface of the ice cream, and that just is gonna stop a skin from forming. Perfect, and this is gonna go into the freezer until we're ready for pudding. Right, time to move on to our pork. So I've got a 1.5 kilo pork shoulder here, and pork shoulder is a brilliant cut of meat for slow cooking, and it's usually quite cheap, and it's gonna get a lovely crackling on the top, which is like the best thing to have at Christmas. So the first thing I'm gonna do is just take it out of here, and then I'm just gonna pat the skin dry. And because we want to get a nice crackly skin here, the key is to get it really nice and dry. And then we're gonna score the skin. Now, when we score the skin, we basically just wanna cut through, not too deep, the surface of the skin, and basically make a bit of a checkered pattern. It helps to have a really sharp knife when you do this. So as you can see, I'm not going super deep, and then we're gonna go down this way too. Right, that looks super good. Then we're gonna give it a little drizzle of oil, and this kind of just helps the salt to stick. Any kind of oil you've got. I've bought a bottle of vegetable oil for this recipe because we're gonna use it in lots of things, and it's way cheaper than olive oil, but if you've got olive oil, absolutely use olive oil. So we'll just give it a little drizzle. We don't need heaps, and I'm gonna put a little drizzle in the bottom of my pan as well. I'm using my cast iron Dutch oven for this, but you can absolutely just use a big roasting tray. It's absolutely perfect. Then a sprinkle of salt, and we want quite a bit of salt because the salt helps draw out the moisture in the skin, which is going to help it get really, really nice and crackly. Oh yeah. And then we'll just rub it all in. Let's get a little bit more. Now we're only putting the salt and the oil on the skin, so don't worry about the other sides. Right, then we're gonna pop your joint into your tray or into your pan, and you want the skin to be face up. So the point of the first 30 minutes of cooking is to get a really nice crackle on our skin. So mine's a bit of an awkward shape for having it up, but I might just put it like this. Right, this is gonna go into our nice hot oven for about 30 minutes. So you wanna keep an eye on this. We want to keep it going until the skin is really nice and crackly and blistery. So you're looking for it to blister up. I might actually have to turn mine a little bit about 15 minutes in just because of the way it's sitting. So we'll come back in 30 minutes and see how it's looking. Right, next it's pastry time. We're gonna make a super easy rough puff pastry. I am gonna do a full proper video on this that's gonna really go through the steps and kind of briefly do it today, but come back for that video soon if you'd really like to go in depth into puff pastry. So we're gonna use 320 grams of plain flour. Did I use a big enough bowl and I've done too much? I just get carried away. Perfect. We're gonna add about half a teaspoon of salt. I'm just gonna do a whoop. And then I've got some cold butter. So my butter has been in the fridge this whole time. I'm gonna leave it out from now though for the rest of the recipes, but nice cold butter, and we need 250 grams of cold butter. It's actually a really hot day today in my house, and this butter has only been out for about 2 minutes and it's already melting. I'm gonna cube this butter into quite big chunks. Now the key to a good rough puff is actually keeping the butter cold. So if you're having the same problem as me that it's really hot, you can just keep putting it in the fridge, pulling it out again, put it in the fridge, pull it out again, because as soon as that butter melts, we're gonna lose those lovely layers. Okay, then we're gonna whack all the butter into the bowl and then just toss the butter. Oh my gosh, I'm really messy cooking today. It's the Christmas. You'd think I've had a drink. I haven't. Right, I'm gonna start by just tossing the butter in the flour to fully coat it. And then for this rough puff, we're basically just gonna squeeze the butter into like flakes and just keep dropping them back into the flour. So the idea is we don't wanna rub the butter into the flour. We're not making breadcrumbs. We're actually trying to make flecks or flakes of butter in here. Right, my butter is looking lovely and flaky in the flour, which is awesome. And I'm gonna work quite quickly now just because it is so warm in here and I can feel the butter is getting really soft quickly. So I'm gonna tip this onto my surface at this point, but you can absolutely just leave it in the bowl. And I'm gonna create kind of a little well in the center. And then I've got some really cold water here, so it's just tap water that I've whacked an ice cube into. And we're gonna start with 6 tablespoons of cold water, but we just wanna add enough that our pastry comes together. Oh my gosh, I wasn't counting. 4, 5, 6, I hope that was right. Okay, then I'm gonna kind of just bring the outside in to incorporate that water. And we don't want to knead this, we kind of want to be pushing it together because we want to keep all those flakes of butter as flaky as possible. Of course, because it's a flaky pastry, right? We'll go for another 2. And I like to kind of like bring it in like a square. So it's kind of pushing all the dry bits from the edges into the middle to see if they can incorporate in the water. And you'll literally be able to see all that beautiful butter just on the surface, and it's gonna be amazing. Right, I think we're looking pretty good. It's still a tiny bit crumbly around the edges, but it is really nice and combined in the middle, so I don't want it to get too wet. Okay, we're gonna wrap our lovely pastry up. Wrap it up nice and tightly. And this is gonna go back into the fridge. I'm probably gonna leave it for maybe up to an hour for this first chill, just because it has got really warm with me combining it together. But we need to fold it 3 times. So you kind of can plan out your folds throughout your cooking journey. If you made this really early in the morning, you might leave it an hour between. I'm probably gonna leave an hour at the beginning and then 30 minutes between the rest of the folds. All right, moving on. It's Kenny's turn now. He's gonna take over. We're gonna make some brioche buns. I thought slow cooked pork with some buns. I'm definitely gonna stuff my pork and slaw inside and make a bit of a Christmas burger, and I am so flippin' excited for that later. Now, I do have a full recipe of how to make these brioche buns up on my channel, so I will link that down below so you can really learn how to make it properly. Thanks, Kenny. I love making bread so much. I feel like this is gonna be the thing that elevates the feast too, is like having a homemade bread. It didn't cost us very much money, but it's gonna look and taste epic, and it's like really the effort that you put in for your Christmas dinner. It's amazing. And we've totally proved that it doesn't need to cost heaps of money. We can do it on a budget and it's still gonna be incredible, if not better. In fact, I think it's more impressive. Just gonna say it. Right, this has been going for about 15 to 20 minutes. It's looking lovely and glossy and smooth. Let's just scrape this off our dough hook. Oh yeah, I love homemade brioche buns. Okay, then I'm just gonna kind of push it down in the bowl a little bit so it's nice and compact on itself. Now, it will still be a bit sticky because it hasn't had any time to relax yet. Then we're just gonna glad wrap it in here. And again, if you don't have a stand mixer, you can absolutely make this dough without it. So you just need to do it by hand, and you might need to grease your hands every so often on a bench and just keep going until you get there. Right, we'll glad wrap this nice and tight, and we want it to be really tight so that we don't get any air in there because it's gonna dry out the top. And we're gonna put this somewhere really warm for about 45 minutes. I'm gonna whack it in my airing cupboard, although I could probably just leave it in here because it's boiling. Oh my goodness, get a look at this pork. It is beautiful and blistery. That skin looks incredible. So it actually took about 45 minutes in my oven, and I had it quite low down in the oven. So once your skin is nice and blistery, we're gonna drop the temperature of the oven. Now, usually I would drop it to about 150 and cook it for 3 hours, but because I'm gonna need to put some other stuff in the oven, I'm gonna drop it to 170, and I'm gonna cook this for another 2 hours and keep an eye on it. Then we're gonna whack our lid on. Now, if you're using a big tray and you don't have a pot with a lid, just cover your pork with 2 layers of tin foil so it's really nice and covered, and just kind of push it down the side. So this is gonna go back in for about another 2 to 2.5 hours before we check on it. Right, now it's time to do our first fold in our lovely puff pastry. Let's have a look in here. Oh my gosh, you can just see all the butter in it. It looks incredible. I'm so excited. Okay, let's give this a little dusting with flour. And then we're gonna roll this out, and I wanna kind of keep a long rectangle, so I'm gonna try and keep this shape. But it is hot in here, so we're gonna have to work fast. Now, it's the folding of the rough puff that gives it those lovely layers. So this is important. You can see all those flecks of butter. Oh yeah. Oh my gosh, they are melting already though. It must be boiling in here. No wonder I'm sweating. Right, this is a rough puff, so I'm not gonna focus on being too neat, but I am gonna focus on layers. Ogres have layers. Okay, so then we wanna fold it into thirds. So I'm gonna fold my far away side over. Oh yeah, you can see it's already sticking to my surface. I did just have the pork on here. That's probably why it's really hot. And we're gonna brush off any excess flour. Then we're gonna fold in this side too. Oh yep, that is melting. Reminder for next time, don't put something hot on the surface and then do pastry on it. Then I'm gonna have to use my little scrapey to move it around. Ay, ay, ay. Right, we'll flip that over. But we can see there's a lot of butter in there, which is incredible. Then I'll take my little bit of Glad wrap that I had it wrapped in before. And we're gonna pop our pastry in this way. Wrap it up again and pop it back in the fridge. Now we're gonna do this 2 more times to create heaps of lovely layers. I just sat down for 10 minutes because my feet are sore and swollen. Pregnant life. But I decided, I was like, because this is a low budget Christmas, I'm gonna spend an extra little $2 and make some little menus for my guests. So I just printed these at Warehouse Stationery, and then I just put them in my Christmas aprons. They're not aprons, my Christmas napkins. And I'm gonna put these on the table, and I just think they look really cute, and it looks like I've outdone myself, which I have. But it only cost me $2 to get them printed, and I love it. Right, back to our pastry. It's time for our second fold, and it's much colder this time, which is good. And I didn't put anything hot on the surface this time, so it's not gonna melt on the surface. I almost was tempted to get the ice out and ice the bench. That would be such a cool idea if you had an ice bench that you could do pastry on. And then we're gonna do the same thing. So last time I had it this way and I folded up this way. So then I'm gonna turn it this way and roll it out this way this time. So we're looking for the same long rectangle shape. We're gonna brush off as much flour, and the same thing again, fold it into thirds. So we're folding up from the end in. I'll give it a little brush out. Don't worry that it's a little bit rough around the edges. It's a rough puff. Okay, and fold this side in as well. And we'll wrap it back up in our Glad wrap. And then this is gonna go back in the fridge for another 30 minutes, and we'll do 1 more fold. If you've got extra time though, leave it for a bit longer so that butter really, really goes back nice and cold. So if you've got time to leave it for a good couple of hours in between, that would be brilliant. See you then. Right, while I've got a bit of a floury surface from the pastry, now's a really good time to roll out our buns. My dough is looking beautiful. It's lovely and risen up. Oh my gosh, it just looks amazing, and it's gonna be really nice and stretchy. So I'm just gonna kind of fold it in on itself a little bit. And again, don't forget, I've got the full video on how to make brioche buns, so definitely go and watch that. And let's tip this out onto the surface. Now you can absolutely flour your surface before you do this part, but I like to try and not if I can avoid it, just because I don't want to add any more flour in. You know, I've made a really lovely moist dough and I want to keep it that way. So I try to handle it as little as possible really, and by folding it back in on itself, you kind of get a really nice, beautiful dough here. Okay, so we're going to roll these into buns to go with our dinner. You could do any size you like. You could have lots of little dinner rolls. I'm gonna do really nice big ones. I want some and to have a big Christmas bun to go with their lovely pork. So I've got 6 guests. We're doing this for 6, but I do need an extra bun to use as breadcrumbs in my stuffing. So I'm gonna go for 8 buns, and then I'll have an extra one maybe for nibbling on the side. And what I'm gonna do is weigh the whole thing. Okay, 1,264. Siri, hey Siri, what's 1,264 divided by 8?
1,264 divided by 8 is 158.
158. So I'm gonna weigh out each of my balls to 158 grams. We'll cut them into 8 first, and then I'll roll them into balls. Perfect. Now with each of my little buns, I'm gonna shape them into balls. So how I like to do this is actually just tuck them in on themselves. So kind of tuck them in under their bottoms, and then roll them in my hands, and then you can kind of roll them on the bench too in your hand, and it just gives you a really lovely round shape without having any kind of cracks on the top. Beautiful. And then I'll pop them onto my baking tray, which I've lined with a sheet of baking paper. brioche dough is the best. It is so lovely and soft. I love it. Perfect, right, there are my beautiful 8 buns. They look amazing. We are gonna re-cover them in Glad wrap. Now I don't wanna do this too tightly because I don't wanna push them down and then they don't have space to grow. So I'm just gonna put a nice big sheet on the top and kind of just like loosely place it over so that they are protected. And this is just gonna stop the surfaces from drying out and keep it nice and warm in there. Then we're gonna place this back somewhere warm for about an hour until they are really nice and fluffy and big. Alrighty, moving on. Now, I know we're making a lot of things from scratch, but number one, it's Christmas and this is where you can put effort in to make a really lovely meal for your whānau, or do it all together. Take a different job each and make something different each. But also, the reason why I'm making so many things from scratch is because I bought all the ingredients and I can use them in lots of different ways, so I don't have to spend heaps of money and then have heaps of stuff left over. So we're gonna make aioli. Now, again, I do have another video on how to make mayonnaise. So I'm basically just gonna make mayonnaise and add some garlic and some lemon to make a really lovely garlicky aioli to go on my slaw. Absolutely, if you don't wanna make your own mayo, don't worry about it, just add store-bought. But we're on a budget and we're making things from scratch. So to get us started, I need 2 egg yolks, and we are gonna keep the egg whites. We're gonna use them in our stuffing. So let's just crack our yolks into the bowl. 1. Oh, why did I do that? So the ratio of mayonnaise or aioli is 1 egg yolk to 100 mils of neutral oil. So we're doing 2 egg yolks. So then we're gonna go for 200 mils of oil. So we'll pop them to the side. Then into our egg yolks, we're gonna add some garlic because we are doing a garlic aioli. Now you can do it as garlicky as you like. I'm gonna go for 1 really nice big clove of garlic. And we wanna mince this, so get it as fine as possible. To crush my garlic, I just like to use the side of a knife, smash it down, and then the skin comes off really nice and easy. But we'll just chop off the edge, and then I'm gonna chop it really nice and finely. And then you can use the side of your knife to kind of smush the garlic down, which helps it get really nice and fine. Or just use a garlic crusher. I actually don't own a garlic crusher. I always do it by hand. Right, I'm gonna pop that garlic into my egg yolks. Then we're gonna add a good pinch of salt. Lovely. Now, obviously we're doing this on a budget, but if you had some whole grain mustard in the fridge, you could add a teaspoon of that and it would go really nicely. Or actually any kind of mustard, but we didn't have the budget for it, so we're skipping the mustard. And we're gonna give this a really, really good whisk until the egg yolks are much lighter in color. Alrighty, my yolks are looking much lighter in color, and this is a really heavy duty whisk, which I actually bought for $1 from the charity shop, but it makes it really nice and easy to control in here. Now, the thing with making mayo or aioli, especially by yourself, is we need both hands. We're gonna need 1 hand for pouring and 1 hand for whisking. So I like to put a tea towel under my bowl, or you could use like a grippy or anything you've got, and the tea towel just prevents it from bashing about too much. So my tea towel's gonna go under there. Is my whisk gonna fall over? Then I'm gonna pour my oil into a nice jug. This coffee jug is my favorite one to do it with, just because it can create a really nice steady stream flow. So we're going for 200 mils of oil. Okay, then we need to get our lemon ready. So I'm just gonna rub it on the bench to get the juices flowing. This is actually not a very ripe lemon that they sent, but we make do. And I'm gonna use the other half of the lemon for the dessert. So don't cut it with your garlic knife because we don't want garlicky pudding. So I'll just cut that in half. And we're gonna add the lemon juice once I've incorporated half of the oil. So whoop, let's just pop that to the side, ready? Okay, so the key is to pour your oil in really nice and slowly while whisking as hard as you can, especially at the beginning. If you add too much oil at once, it's gonna split immediately and then it's no coming back from there. So whisking really hard with one hand, pouring a very steady stream of oil with the other. If you need to stop to hold the bowl and whisk, you stop and hold the bowl and whisk. And then once you get it going and you get it caught, we're just gonna keep going until we've got half the oil in before we add the lemon. Right. You know what I wanna buy? I wanna buy something that holds my bowl still so it doesn't wibble around the place. I've had an idea. Let's see if this works. Oh yeah! This is way better. This is the best hack ever. Put your bowl in a bigger bowl in a tea towel. Right, my mayo is looking lovely and thick. I've added half of my oil. Now I'm gonna squeeze in half of the lemon juice. Oh yeah, then we're gonna whisk that in as hard as we can. And then keep going with the rest of your oil until it's all incorporated and it's lovely and thick. Oh my goodness, I'm sweating so much. Why did I choose to make homemade mayo on a really hot day? This looks beautiful. Now we'll give it a little taste for seasoning. Oh my gosh, yum! The lemon is delicious. We'll add a tiny bit more salt. Oh, that's quite a lot. Tiny little pinch more of salt. And then that is ready to go. Look at this. That is gorgeous. Right, one last taste. Perfect. That is going to go so beautifully on our slaw. We can pop this in the fridge until we're ready to use it. Right, we are smashing through this list. We've done ice cream, we've got the pork nearly ready, we've done the rough puff, we've just got one fold to go, we've done the buns, we've made the aioli. Let's move on to some veg. Now I'm gonna prep all the veg now, and my buns are gonna go in the oven next, and then as soon as my buns come out, I'm gonna get my veg going in. So we've got a nice big, this is probably a quarter pumpkin here, that I am gonna just hack through to start with. I love pumpkin, but if you're not a pumpkin fan, you could use an orange kumara. That would work really beautifully too. Right, I'm just gonna start by getting some of these seeds out. I'm gonna cut them into chunks, and I'm gonna leave the skin on, but it's completely up to you whether you take it. And we're gonna go for kind of smallish chunks. I like to keep a little bowl on hand too when I'm doing the veg, just it makes it really easy just to whack all my scraps in, and then I can pop it in the compost. Right, we're gonna give it a drizzle of oil. A good drizzle of oil. Let's be generous, eh? It's Christmas. And a really good coating of salt. Ooh, salt. A good coating of salt. Oh my gosh, I cannot talk. Right, we'll give that a nice toss so they're all coated. Then into here, I'm gonna add some cloves of garlic to roast, but I'm gonna keep the skin on, and then we're gonna squeeze them out at the end and put them on top of our green beans. So they're just gonna go in full clove, skins and all. And these roasting with the pumpkin is gonna give the pumpkin a lovely aroma, but then we can use the garlic, the actual flesh of the garlic on our green beans. Or you could just put them on the table and people can kind of put them whatever they want. And seeing as we bought a whole clove of garlic, let's just whack them all in. Now, something else I like to add to the pumpkin, this is completely optional, but I like to do a little sprinkling of ground cinnamon, just a tiny bit, and it adds a really lovely flavor to the pumpkin. And also it's very festive, isn't it? So a really light sprinkling. Lovely. Right, we'll set those to the side. These are gonna take about 30 to 45 minutes to cook, depending on how big you cut them. So when our buns come out, we're gonna whack this pumpkin in. Right, next I've got some lovely green beans. You could either use fresh green beans or frozen green beans. Now I've written charred beans, and I was gonna do them in a pan and get it really nice and hot, but what I'm actually gonna do is get them really, really hot in a tray in the oven with some lovely butter, and they'll be lovely and really roasty, which will be delicious. Then we'll add the garlic that we've roasted from the pumpkin on top and some toasted almonds, and they're gonna be absolutely elite. It's such a great way to just lift such a simple vegetable. We are just gonna top and tail just the ends, and then we'll whack them in there. Right, we're gonna give those a really good pinch of salt as well. And we'll just put a big chunk, I'd say this is about a tablespoon, on the top, and that's gonna melt through as it bakes in the oven or as it roasts and be really lovely. So we will give it a little toss. These are gonna take about 20 to 30 minutes to roast, but you can absolutely just leave them in until they're really, really roasty. So our pumpkin will go in first, and then we'll whack in our beans a little bit after that. Alrighty, next we're gonna move on to some onions, and we're gonna use one onion that's gonna go in with our pork, and the other onion is gonna be for our stuffing. So we're gonna cut them at the same time, but cut them slightly differently. So my first onion for my stuffing, I'm just gonna dice it. I want it to be quite nice and small. Now, a tip to stop you from crying when you cut your onions is to leave the end, I don't know what that bit's called, but the groundy part, on as long as you can. So that's where the fumes that are released from, apparently, that make you cry. Now, I never cry anymore when I do onions, so I really think it works. Then I'm gonna whack this into a frying pan, and because I just want these to sweat, it doesn't matter that my frying pan is cold right now. Oh, okay, I take it back. My eyes is running now. Ready for our stuffing, I'm gonna add a little drizzle of oil. Oh my gosh, I actually am crying. I jinxed it. Okay, we're gonna go a little bit of salt, and we're gonna whack this. Then we're gonna whack this on a medium heat and let them sweat a bit. So we want them to be really nice and translucent. Oh my gosh, I cannot believe those onions made me cry, especially after I just talked up a big game. Now, I never cry anymore when I do onions, so I really think it works. Oh, that's so funny. Okay, the second onion, this is gonna go into the side of the pork for our onion gravy. And I'm just gonna cut them into slices. And we'll set these to the side, and we're gonna pop these onions in the pork dish when we take off the lid. So in a little bit. Alrighty, while we're on veggie cutting, we might as well cut our slaw as well. The thing with cutting our slaw in advance is that it can go a bit brown. So what I'm gonna do is I've got a nice big bowl here. I'm gonna fill it with cold water and add a few ice cubes. And then we're gonna put our fennel and our apple in it, keep it in the fridge, and then we'll dress it just before we eat. And now, I've got one fennel here, probably the saddest fennel ever. I did do an online shop. I was hoping for a really big one, but we just make do with what we've got. So we're gonna cut all the ends off. Don't throw these away, keep them, because these lovely fronds at the end are really beautiful to decorate our slaw, and they actually have a really beautiful flavor. So we'll keep them to the side for now. Then I'm gonna slice my fennel in half lengthways like this. Right, then I'm gonna get my knife, and I actually might even cut this in half this way, and I'm gonna really carefully and as thinly as I can slice my fennel. You could use a mandolin if you had them, or if you have a slicing attachment on your food processor, that's a great idea too, but it's just as quick just to do it with a knife. Lovely, and then you've got these beautifully fine bits of fennel, and we're gonna whack those into our cold water. Right, then onto our apple. I went for green apples because they're really nice and tart. What we're gonna do for our apple slices is I'm actually gonna cut batons. So I'm just gonna cut slices of apple as thinly as I can. Then with my slices, I'm just gonna take a little pile at a time and just julienne them, or cut them into little batons like this, and they'll be really and lovely in the slaw. So we'll whack those into our cold water too. You know what? I think one apple is actually just enough in here because it's about the same amount of quantity as my fennel. So I'm gonna stick with one. So you've even got a spare apple for the chef. Right, we'll just whack a couple of ice cubes in here. Make sure your apple and your fennel are fully coated in water. Then we're gonna pop this in the fridge. Okay, the last thing I need to cut are some prunes for our stuffing. So my onions are still sauteing beautifully over there. They smell amazing. I've got a bag of prunes here, so this is gonna be good for everybody's digestion after all the Christmas feasting. If you know, you know. Now you can use as many as you like, so let's go for about 100 grams. I'm probably just gonna roughly chop all of them, to be honest. Then you've got a few big bits, a few little bits. Right, that looks perfect. They're gonna go into my little baking dish here. Right, while our onions are still sweating, let's get these buns in the oven. And how flippin' brilliant do these look? Oh, I'm so buzzing. My favorite thing with a brioche bun when they're beautifully risen is giving them a little wobble, and they just are so wobbly and amazing. Right, it's time to check on our pork. This has been going for 2 hours with the lid on. Let's have a little look. Oh my flippin' gosh, it looks amazing. Okay, that's hot. I've got to remember, that is hot. Where's my tongs? Okay, let's have a little look. Oh my goodness, it is looking so succulent. I cannot believe how beautifully, well I can because I make it all the time, but the meat is so beautifully tender. So what we're looking for is that the meat is just basically starting to pull and flake away. So if your meat is starting to look really juicy and flaky, then it's time to take the lid off. If it's not yet, leave it in for another half an hour with the lid on and then check it again then. But this looks absolutely so scrummy and I'm so excited. We're just gonna sprinkle those onions around the outside. Now obviously this is quite a fatty bit of pork, so I've got a little bit of oil around the outside, but that's really nice for my onions to go into. And we'll just toss them a little bit so they're coated. Oh yeah. Then we're gonna whack this back in the oven with the lid off for about another 30 minutes. And what we're looking for is that skin to really dry up and get really nice and crispy. So our oven is still at about 170 degrees. My buns are currently in there. When I take my pork out in 30 minutes, we're gonna wrap it up so it stays nice and moist, get all the rest of our veg cooked, and then we're in the home run. And I'm so hungry and so excited. And I guess they're gonna arrive soon, ready for some delicious kai. With our sliced almonds, I'm just gonna whack them into a frying pan. We're gonna use the whole packet. So half of these almonds we're gonna set aside for our dessert, and then the other half of the almonds we're gonna use to sprinkle over our green beans. It's gonna add a really nice crunch to it. So I'm just gonna whack these on a medium heat, keep them moving gently, just giving them a little shake until they're really nice and toasty. Then we'll pop them to the side until we need to use them. It's our final pastry turn. Yum. I can't believe we made puff pastry. It was so awesome. All right, our final fold into thirds. So make sure we dust any excess flour. Now this is ready to go. So I'm gonna pop it back in the fridge one last time and we'll roll it out just before we pop it on top of our tart. Beautiful. Stuffing time. So we're gonna use some onion and sage pork sausages to make our stuffing. And the reason why I've gone for a flavored sausage is so that I didn't need to buy sage and things to go into here. But if you had some fresh sage, that would be so super lovely. So what I've done, so we've got the onions and the prunes in here already. We're gonna open up these sausages and we're gonna squeeze the meat out of them. So we don't want the skins. Oh, they do smell good. The sage is really coming through. This is perfect. So we're gonna squeeze the sausage out of the skins and into our, make sure your onions are nice and cool though, because we don't want the meat to start cooking yet. Now remember those egg whites that we saved for my aioli? We're gonna use those now too. If you didn't make your own aioli, you can just add one whole egg as well. So we're gonna pop that in. And then we're gonna give this a really, really good, it's gonna be disgusting, mix together. And you want those sausages to really break down. And make sure you wash your hands really, really, really well after you do this. Oh yeah, look at these buns. They are huge and amazing. They're gonna be very hot, but I am gonna very carefully, oh my gosh, wait a second, look at this. I love when they join together and then you pull them apart. It's like the most satisfying thing ever. They just look gorgeous, right? I'm gonna really quickly and carefully take them off and just pop them onto my little cooling rack. Ah, they're so hot though. Please be careful. Don't do what I do. Do what I say, don't do what I do. Just kidding, do what I do. Do all the Christmas baking. Okay, then we need one of these for breadcrumbs, and I want to cool it down quickly because I want to whack it in here. If you'd made these earlier, then you've got heaps of time to let them cool. So I'm just going to choose, maybe I'll choose the ugliest one. I think this one. And I'm just going to cut it open and just let it cool, and this will just help it cool a bit quicker. Your other buns are pretty much ready to go on your Christmas table, but the last thing we're gonna do is brush them with a tiny bit of butter, and that helps them stay really nice and shiny. And we do have a little spare bit of butter here. So I'm even just gonna get a little teaspoonful, and because they're so warm, you can just rub it on the top and it will just melt immediately onto them, and they're just gonna be really lovely and shiny and beautiful. With the bun that we set aside to cool, we're just going to chop it and tear it really, really roughly. And we're going to add this into our stuffing mixture instead of breadcrumbs. And because it's lovely and fresh, it doesn't matter that it's super rough. It's going to absorb all those lovely juices from the stuffing mixture. So just mix it through until it's all incorporated. Oh yeah, that looks perfect. It smells incredible, and it's only just a few ingredients, but it's absolutely gonna be phenomenal. Another word I can't say. Now this is optional, but I'm just gonna pop a couple of prunes just on the top. I really like when the top of something kind of shows what's inside, so it kind of says, hey, I'm a prune and sausage stuffing. That is perfect. This is gonna bake for about 25 to 30 minutes. So same as our green beans, we're gonna get those in the oven now and pull our pork out. And now pork is out the oven, you can actually whack the temperature back up to around 200, 220 degrees just to get those veggies really, really nice and roasted. This pork looks absolutely unreal. It is so succulent. Now we're gonna take it out of this pan because I'm gonna make some gravy in here. Ah, it's so succulent, it's just falling apart. I need 2 pairs. Right, here we go, 2 tongs. We're gonna leave those onions and all the lovely juices in there. Now, with our pork, I'm just gonna really carefully try and pull off the skin. You might need to use a knife to pry it away. Here we go, but once you get it going, oh yeah. So we're gonna take our skin, our lovely crackling off, because we want it to stay nice and crackly. Oh my gosh, it looks absolutely unreal. I cannot wait to dig in. Then we're gonna coat our lovely pork shoulder in tin foil. I'm gonna do 2 bits because I really wanna keep all the heat in and all those juices in there. Then we're gonna put this on top of the oven, not in the oven, on top of the oven so it still stays warm from the heat, but it's just gonna rest, and that's gonna let it stay really, really nice and juicy. Now our crackling I'm gonna leave on this tray, and then just before we serve up, I'm gonna whack it back in the oven just to make sure it's nice and crispy and nice and warm. Okay, then to make our gravy. Now often I would use a stock and reduce this for ages, but we were on a budget, so we're just gonna use some good old roast meat gravy powder. I've just got 1 sachet here. I'm gonna tip it in to my roasting dish. We're gonna add in some water. I'm gonna estimate. Then I'm gonna put this onto a really nice low heat and just let all those juices cook in. Those onions are really nice and caramelized from being in there with the pork, and it's gonna make a really delicious gravy. It's time to work on our pudding. I am so excited to make this. So I've got 150 grams of caster sugar here, and we're gonna put this into a pan, and you wanna use a pan that can go into the oven. We want to shake it out so it's nice and even, and we're going to get the rest of that juice of a lemon that we had from earlier and squeeze that in. Oh yeah. Now we don't want to stir this at this stage. We're going to put it onto a nice medium heat. The only thing you might do is give it a little shake every now and then, and we're going to let this melt until it's a really lovely golden amber color. That sugar is looking a lovely amber color. Now we need to whack in some butter. So because my butter is all melted, I'm not gonna measure it, but I'm gonna go for about 2 tablespoons or a nice big chunk. We're gonna pop that in there and just move it around really nice and gently, and it's gonna bubble up. This is gonna make the most beautiful caramel. And you can smell the lemon in there too. It's absolutely delicious. Once all your butter is really nicely melted in there, we're gonna plonk in our pears. And we'll just reduce the heat right down. And we want to give it a little toss. We want all those pears to get really nicely coated. Now let's roll out our puff pastry. Oh, I'm so proud of us. This looks amazing. Now we want to roll it about 1/2 centimeter thick. So, we want to get it pretty nice and big. I'll just add a little tiny bit of flour. And some days you'll need more flour than others. It's just dependent often on how warm it is in your kitchen. It is roasting in here today, and I bet on Christmas Day it's gonna be roasting too, so a little bit of flour might be needed. Oh my goodness, those pears just smell unreal. Okay, so we wanna roll our pastry out bigger than our pan. Now what I'm gonna do is use a nice big plate, one that's just bigger than the pan, and I'm gonna pop it on and use it to measure. We'll just trim. Okay, then we've got our lovely circle ready to go. We'll just make sure it's nice and loose on the counter. We don't want it to stick. So you want to arrange your pears in a way that you want them to be seen. So I've gone for a bit of a beautiful sun shape, and I just think it's going to look absolutely beautiful. Now we've got those toasted almonds from before. So I want to add 1/2 now, and then I'm going to sprinkle 1/2 on top just as it comes out the oven. And I'm just going to sprinkle them in kind of around the edges and around all the gaps of the pears. We're going to take it off. Oh yeah, this looks incredible. Then we're going to very carefully place on our pastry, our puff pastry, and then I'm just going to use my spatula just to tuck the pastry down around the edges. Then if you've got a spare egg, we're going to give it a little egg wash. So I'm just going to brush it nice and gently over the top, and this is just going to give us a really nice golden shiny finish. Even though this is the bottom, we still want the bottom to look amazing. Now, hopefully all your veg is ready to come out the oven and you've got space for this to go in. It's gonna bake for about 20 to 25 minutes until that pastry is really flaky and really lovely and golden. Okay, our gorgeous fennel and apple are just out of the fridge. And the great thing about putting them in the icy cold water is that they are really, really lovely and crunchy. Right, let's get this dressed. So we're gonna add a good dollop of our lovely garlic aioli. And I'm just gonna do this with my hands. It's gonna make it so much easier. We're just gonna dress our lovely slaw in that gorgeous aioli that we made. Whack this beautiful slaw into the bowl. Oh my goodness, doesn't that look amazing? Then those lovely fennel fronds that we kept before, I'm just gonna pick off some of them and sprinkle them on top. That's ready to go on the table. Then, because we went to all that effort to make this homemade aioli, let's put some in a little dish to go on the table too. Just give it a little whoop, whack the spoon in the side. All right, my beans and pumpkin are looking so lovely and roasted, and all these gorgeous garlic cloves are gonna be absolutely stunning. Look at that, oh wow. And we'll give it a good toss in the butter. One more. Oh yeah, that's a really good one. Then we're gonna give our green beans a really good sprinkling of our toasted almonds. They're gonna make them really nice and crunchy. It is time that we get into this beautiful pork that has been resting. It's gonna be so nice and juicy. Oh my gosh. Look at this. Look at how just tender that is. Check this out. These bones are just gonna literally fall out, and this meat is so tender. Oh my gosh, look at that. Look at the way this just pulls apart. Ooh, and look at this crackling. I'm just gonna cut up, oh, hear that crunch, the bits that we scored. Check out this. That is crunchy. This is ready to go on the table, but the best part about being the chef is you get to have a little taster before everyone else. Oh my gosh, that is flipping delicious. Oh my god, this is the best Christmas ever. Let's get it on the table.